Hello everybody, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to be taking a break from going over all the unique modules and upgrades that have been buffed / nerfed in this latest update of 15.0, and instead going back a couple tiers down to tier 7, which is actually my favorite tier in the game. And we are going to be conducting a full-on ship review of the tier 7 premium heavy class cruiser for the Imperial Japanese Navy, the Maya. Now, the Maya is one of those ships you just don't see a whole lot of nowadays, or if at all. Excuse me, bad English there. And now, why is that? Why is no one playing this ship? Because I remember pretty crystal clear when this ship was in testing and when it went live for the first time, everyone was saying, oh, this ship is going to be broken. This ship is going to be insanely strong. This is basically a tier 7 Takao. This is crazy, right? And then lo and behold, it really wasn't that at all. And when it went live, I maybe saw it for a solid month, if at that, and then now it's gone silent. I never see this ship, at all being sailed around and whatnot. And I was thinking, why is this? Why does no one play this ship? Well, I think it's a couple things for why no one plays this ship. One, honest to God, guys, and I could be wrong for saying this, I think the Mayoko is just a flat out better ship to play tier for tier. For a tier 7 at least, compared to the Maya. It's its tech tree counterpart. It has more guns. It just feels a little bit more comfortable to play. Its torpedoes are, I don't want to say usable, because I don't want to say the Maya's torpedoes aren't usable, but the torpedo armament on the Mayoko complements its play style better than the Maya's does. I think the Maya was trying to be this more aggressive IGN heavy cruiser that is an opportunist that takes advantage of broadsides with its consumable loadout and has a little bit more tankiness also with its consumable loadout. If you don't know, this ship does have a heal at tier 7, and it also comes with a main battery reload booster consumable, which is actually quite interesting, not only because we're at tier 7, but because we're flying the Japanese flag. So after playing a lot of games in this ship, I can conclude I do indeed like the Mayoko better, but I do have some fun, or I've had some fun in the Maya, and that fun mainly comes around what the IGN Navy does good in this game, which is it really is good at HE farming, and then it takes advantage of broadsides with its 203mm guns. If you are familiar with my channel at all, you've realized and know that I have done a whole down the line series on the IGN heavy cruiser line, starting from the Furataka going all the way up to the Zao. It was actually my very first down the line series because I think this is the quintessential heavy cruiser line to help teach people how to play heavy cruisers. I think it does everything right, learning how to play around stealth, learning the difference between HE and AP and being rewarded for both, how to kite, those sort of things, right? I think it's just a very good line to help teach you how to play this game. But now we come to tier 7, back to the Maya, and I'm a little bit puzzled when I look at this ship, because the hull isn't necessarily bad, but I'll get to it here in a little bit. I do find it to be a little bit squishy here and there depending on who's firing at you. This ship does not like to be shot at by enemy battleships, which is crazy because it is a heavier cruiser and it should be relatively tanky, but especially when you're going nose in on against your enemies with those large caliber guns, you do have a step citadel, which is going to relate to a lot of citadels through the schnoz. But anyways, if you guys are new to the channel, with these ship reviews, I go ahead and do a port analysis. Then I'll go ahead and show some gameplay in her, give you my final thoughts about her, whether or not I recommend her and how to play her, and then we'll conclude the video. So without further ado, guys, let's get into the port analysis of this video, guys, and starting off with the armor layout. So here you go. This is a pretty standard armor layout for a tier 7 cruiser. We're coming in with a 16mm nose. We have a 16mm ass with a 29mm deck, which is kind of an interesting threshold number now that I point that out. And then we look at the citadel on this ship, and we do indeed have a citadel belt of 102mm, which is a step citadel. And this is kind of what I wanted wanted to talk about with this ship when it comes, like in regards to pushing forward with this vessel, you will eat random citadels through the nose or around the side armor plating if you're trying to utilize all your guns right around here. So you have to be careful with that. And again, if you're a battleship or a cruiser or whatever going against this thing and you have high penetrating guns with armor piercing, almost like the cheek of the Yamato, aim in a similar area, and you actually will be rewarded with that step citadel shot. It happens more often than you like to think. They like to admit, right? And again, with the rear citadel, you kind of see how it kind of flares to that number 3 turret. Same thing will happen on the ass when it comes to kiting. It is not unlikely to eat citadels up your ass. I mean, you are coated in 16 millimeters front and nose, right? Sorry, the nose and the ass of your ship, so you will actually eat the random citadels from time to time. Moving into survivability, you have 39,200 HP, which actually is very nice for a tier 7 heavy cruiser, and you have 19%, excuse me, torpedo belt reduction, which is pretty nice as well. Going into the artillery, you have 4x2 203 millimeter guns. These do reload in 16.5 seconds, which is kind of a bit of a yikes with this ship. The reload time is pretty damn long. So when I'm comparing it to the Atago here in the same essence of gameplay, it is very, very similar because you will be waiting a while between salvos to get those individual salvo off on target. We look at your maximum range. It's only 15.3 kilometers. That's not very good. The Maya is going to actually is actually forced to play a little bit closer than I would have liked to have it played. I wish this thing had its range out to 16 kilometers, which would be super nice. Obviously, it doesn't, so you're going to have to try to play around that. But then again, you have a heal, which is going to lead to your survivability of your ship a little bit better than other cruisers at this tier, because as we know, some tech trees and premiums get the heal. Most of them do not. Okay. Going into actually the HE and the high explosive, HE and the high explosive, Jesus. The high explosive shells are hitting for 3,000 a pop. This is pretty good. This is what the IGN Navy is known for, with a 17% fire chance, which is awesome. That can obviously be supplemented even higher. I believe up to 19% with both signal flags and the demolition expert skill. 19% on a 16.5 second reload. It's kind of a must in my opinion, because it's going to translate to better damage, a higher fire chance and more fires per minute if you get that fire chance up, right? So if we're going to look at the Maya's HE, high explosive shells, we're going to see that the fires a minute is only at 4.9. So I believe with that extra 2% getting up, you can get that over 5 fires a minute, which again is a must. I do recommend that highly on this vessel. If not demolition expert, for sure both flags, because again, a higher fire chance, that's always going to be a good thing, right? Again, though, because you are only limited to 8 guns, which again, the Mayoko does. I think the Mayoko has 10 guns. You're a bit of a disadvantage with that, only sending 8 shells down range, okay? Also, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if the Maya gets access to that improved dispersion, the whole IGN heavy cruiser line. God. I will double check that for you guys real quick. Let's see. I will double check that for you guys though, just to make sure, to see if it does get any improved dispersion. I believe it does. Yeah, so it does get the improved dispersion a little bit. So you are going to be able to pinpoint your shells on target a little bit better. And now that I mention it, I have been able to land the vast majority of my shells at longer ranges on targets, especially those highly maneuverable targets like destroyers. And again, your HE can go ahead and penetrate 34 millimeters of armor with 840 meters a second. I have found that these shells are not like, I don't want to call them floaty, but you're still going to have to lead them enough to land on target. Like it's still going to take a little bit of skill. Make sure you lead the target enough in order to get these shells to land exactly where you want. Now switching over to the armor piercing, it is coming over at 4,700 maximum shell damage. Again, tying that shell velocity at 840 meters a second. The Maya is one of those ships that I highly recommend you do switch back and forth between AP and HE. And the reason why you should do that is because you only have 8 guns, and again with the survivability expert, or not survivability expert, the repair party consumable, you are going to be playing up and close and personal, and a lot of cruisers within their arrogance is going to more often than not be showing you broadside, just because they want to get all their turrets to bear, and you're going to want to take full advantage of that. Supplement your reload time with your main battery reload boosters. It's going to pay out greater in your favor rather than just spamming and winning an all-out HE war. I think if you want to just spam HE, there are better premium ships out there that are going to get that done for you. And if not premium ships, just look at the tech tree for the IGN Navy. I think that's just a better line for doing that. With the Maya, you're more of an opportunist, and you want to make sure you take advantage and play a little bit on the edge, switching back with your shell types back and forth, right? And that's why I recommend taking Expert Loader. It's only going to help with that as well. Okay, the torpedoes. This is something that I wanted to talk about with the with this ship, and this is a big advantage or also a big disadvantage the way you look at it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this here. These are the 4x4 610 millimeter torpedoes. Okay, they have a 120-second reload time. They have a maximum damage of almost 21,000 damage, guys. That is absolutely devastating if you're able to land these torpedoes on the target, right? With these torpedoes as well, you're going at 76 knots, but do have a high detectability range of the 2.5 seconds, guys. So the one thing that I want you to keep in mind when I'm talking about these torps here, that these torpedoes are indeed the 8-kilometer ZOW torpedoes. They do get on the ZOW. I believe they come with the ZOW originally, and you have to get to the 12-kilometer torpedoes, which I highly recommend you do, because the 8-kilometer torpedoes do not complement the ZOW at all. Okay, the Maya, in my opinion, is a little bit of a mixed bag. Okay, where these torpedoes are insanely powerful, and you actually do land on average more torpedoes at lower tier, because let's just be honest, players are more stupid, or engagements are just closer in usually than they are. Ranges are capped, and you're not exceeding 20 kilometers all the time with battleships, and cruisers aren't pushing like almost 18, 19, 20s, right? So you are likely to land these, and these are really good at devastating battleships. I think they're going to be able to push you. The only problem is I don't think the way the Maya wants to be played, do these torpedoes complement the playstyle of this ship. Matter of fact, I would almost opt to pick up the 10-kilometer torpedoes like the Mayoko has, or even if they gave us the option that the Maya had the 12-kilometer torpedoes, that the ZOW is like the upgradable torpedoes on the ZOW, I think that would have been awesome. I think that really would have taken this ship over the top and made it a little bit more interesting rather than these 8-kilometer torpedoes, or given us the option to choose either the 8 or the 12 on a premium ship, which would have been always nice. I can't remember the last time premium ships came with like the ability to choose, right? But we don't have that. We have the 8-kilometer torpedoes. You can make these torpedoes work, but in my opinion, just because you have 8-kilometer torpedoes doesn't mean you need to sail in within 8 kilometers and utilize these torpedoes. You still want to be playing back, kiting away from targets, and playing at range. That's where this ship wants to excel. I think the sweet spot is between 12 and its maximum range. I really wouldn't want to exceed too much unless I'm forced into those scenarios. And usually if I'm forced into those scenarios, it's towards end of game, or I really have no other option and I have to be put in those bad situations. But other than that, I really would rather play at longer ranges with the Maya. AA defense, not very good, guys, I'll be honest, and nor am I running defensive AA on this ship. I'm running the hydroacoustic search consumable because to me that's just the superior choice. With the range that's kind of gimped anyways, you make sure you want to have that at your disposal because you have a long reload time. You probably want to swivel, get all 8 guns on target at a time, and you want to make sure you time your swivels and that there's no rogue torpedoes coming your way to essentially get you out of the game, okay? Maneuverability is quite nice, 35.5 knots, 780 meter turning circle radius, and 8.1 second rudder shift time with all the upgrades that I have, and I'll show my upgrades here in a bit. And then lastly, we have the detection. It is 12.4, and then with the commander build, I believe you can get it down to like 11.2 kilometers is your max stealth build on the Maya, which again, I guess as a balancing feature that does make sense. Again, I would like to have that been a little bit stealthier, but again, like, you have a heal that should already be enough of a bonus for your ship. I don't really need any more pros on this vessel because that is just going to completely outshine the Mayoko, and we don't want that, okay? So yeah, guys, that is the Maya in a nutshell. I don't mind the Maya. I don't think she's necessarily a bad ship by any means. I just simply would rather be in the Mayoko. I think the Mayoko is just going to be a more fun playstyle for me, and I'm going to get more out of Mayoko on a consistent basis. I guess the one thing is the Maya theoretically up tiers better because it has a heal, and the heal allows it to be sustained within the battle. It's going to lead directly to survivability. But again, because you only have 8 guns, your torpedoes are only 8 kilometers. Your concealment's decently high for an IGN vessel. There's a bunch of things that are leading to it to just seem like, hey, I don't know enough about this ship in order to pick her up. Okay, that's kind of like what I would understand a lot of people to look at it. And again, if I didn't get this ship in a Santa crate, I just don't see myself potentially buying this ship, just because I think the Mayoko, what it's going to offer, or other premium ships are just going to offer something better in my opinion, right? But anyways, guys, enough boring you within the port screen. Let's go ahead and check her out in battle. Alrighty, guys, and here we are in battle with our Tier 7 Premium IGN Heavy Cruiser Maya. We'll go ahead and flash up the upgrades and the commander skills now for you guys. And the first thing I want to talk about with this ship is actually the captain build. You can see that even with a 16.5-second reload that this ship has, I didn't take expert loader. And that's just because the build that I'm currently running on the vessel, I don't think I had physical or enough room for expert loader. If you so choose and you really, really, really want that expert loader skill, you could technically knock out Grease the Gears, and that could just move it over 1 for 1. But then again, then your turret traverse comes 30 seconds. So if you don't know how to manage your turret traverse very well, then that's going to be a bit of a nuisance for you, right? 30 seconds, that's like pretty standard for battleships nowadays, like brawling battleships, which is fine on a battleship, but on a cruiser, which is very maneuverable, it could get a little bit hairy here and there, right? But basically, in game, what I want to talk about and what I want to stress with the Maya is you still very are much a kiting HE spammer. That is, in general, what you want to do and what your ship accomplishes pretty damn well. Not as good as the Mayoko, but pretty damn good. The only difference is because you have 8 guns, you're going to need to supplement that with armor piercing and take full advantage of broadsides. Yes, again, the Mayoko can do the same thing, but especially with this particular vessel and the commander skill that I have procced, you can see that I'm not only taking basically, okay, I don't know, I can't remember the commander skills and names, but there's the 2 commander skills on the bottom left in the tier 4 category that I'm taking. One is to increase my overall DPM by, I believe, was it 8%? And the other one is going to help with my shell dispersion when the amount of enemy ships outnumber my vessel in my main battery firing range. Because your main battery firing range is so small and you only have 8 guns, to me this is a no-brainer. If I can make the consistency of my main battery even more consistent, I'm going to do that. And that's why you see there's a kind of a constraint with the commander skills when I'm doing my particular build. It's one of those things, guys, you're just going to have to try to, you're just going to have to believe me on this one, okay? I've played with multiple builds on the Maya, and to me, this particular build, you get the most out of the Maya. There are some sacrifices that have to be made in order to get this, but I think it's for the best, okay? I think you're going to get the best results out of your Maya with this. It might actually revitalize you. If you're one of those players that has the Maya but hasn't taken her out recently, maybe this build will help you bring her back out. Again, it's 21-point commander, so it does put a bit of a strain on, playing her a lot. Or if you're one of those people that just rotates a commander and moves them down, like your Zhao commander, for example, or stuff like that, it's a very good ship too. It's a very good crew trainer for the whole IGN line, so definitely don't be discouraged by that. And if that's what you do, that's fine. That's great min-maxing. It's completely up to you what you so choose, okay? For the upgrades, everything is pretty self-explanatory on the upgrades. The only difference is that you saw in the 4th slot, I actually went ahead and picked up the rudder shift modification. People are going to go and fight you tooth and nail whether or not you need prop mod or if you want rudder shift mod. For me, I want to make sure I can turn my boat, fire all my guns, and turn back quicker than I can basically engine juke player stopping and start. In the Maya, I really don't find myself stopping and starting too lot. And there I go in the background, stopping and starting. I'll get to that in a bit, but I mainly want to be keeping moving in my Maya. It makes the most amount of sense. But then again, if you find yourself in a situation like this and you could take advantage of island putting the island between you and the enemies that would be technically spotting you, this is basically free damage and farming. This is something every cruiser player should try to take advantage of and find scenarios where they can do this, because if the enemy can't see you, then they can't really shoot or reliably hit you in return, and it basically, you're just out trading them, which is what you want to do. Setting fires is the name of the game here, guys, and that is what I am trying to do for my team, to get these pushing battleships, these lug dunhams, whatever they're called, to burn their damage control party, so my allied torpedo ships can go ahead and take advantage of that. Sadly, I think our destroyer is deceased, but we still have our submarine, which hopefully he can go ahead and land some torpedoes on target. But again, now he's spotted, so he's most likely going to be going down. So I know I'm on a ticking, I'm on a clock, right, basically, with this. So, but a couple things to keep in mind is the main battery firing angles for the Maya. They're actually not that bad. In the kited position, you have about 30 degrees with your front 2 turrets, and then again, forward angle, you have 31 degrees on both your 3 and 4 turrets. So it's really not bad. These firing angles are actually quite nice, which is different from the Myoko, because the Myoko, in order to get all 5 turrets to bear, you're going to find yourself showing a very, very flat target to get Citadel. The Maya, not so much. You can get away with good angling, which is going to increase your armor threshold, which is actually going to lead to a lot of ricochets with your belt armor. So you're going to definitely want to be, again, kited position is the way to go on this ship. You want to stay kited as frequently or as best as possible, as most as possible, right? So, and again, moving into those torpedoes, again, I didn't show the torpedo firing angles. You can only imagine that the first launcher on either side, this first going closest to the nose, you have about a 76 degrees from the rear to a 37 degree torpedo firing angle, and then again, your rear one starting at 78 degrees to 37. So your front torpedo angle is actually quite good for your first launchers, but your rear 2 launchers are going to have, those are your typical IGN launchers. You're going to have to be showing a very flat broadside in order to get those off. So just make sure that if you are going out to do a torpedo launcher of all 8 torpedoes per broadside, maybe time it between reloads. Battleships for sure, but cruisers, I don't know if you're going to be able to turn flat, launch all your torpedoes, and then go ahead and turn back to angle in time. They're probably going to take full advantage of that, so that better be a last-ditch effort, or you're probably going to get Citadel and or nuked in return. And it's just something to keep in mind, right? One thing that I didn't really cover is the consumables. So based on the ship, you have 2 heals base and 2 reload boosters with 3 hydroacoustic search and 3 fighters. The fighter now actually isn't bad, given the fact that Wargaming went ahead this update and buffed the fighters across the board. So your fighter will actually shoot down aircraft. It won't inhibit an aircraft, but they're going to have to pay a price in order to strike you. Again, this is completely voided if they're fighting and shooting down tactical squadrons. All you're doing is limiting the amount of damage you're going to take, because it's not going to affect the overall plane reserves of the aircraft carrier, which is always a great design by Wargaming. But again, going over the heal, it has an action time of 28 seconds. It's only going to heal about 196 HP a second, and about 14% is total healed with an 80% cooldown time. And then for your main battery reload booster, this is the good stuff here. You have an action time of 15 seconds, which is a minus 50% reload booster, which cooldown is going to be about 60 seconds. So in general, you're about, if you time it right with your main battery reload booster, you're probably going to get around 3 salvos off on target. I like to do this if I'm going to catch cruisers broadside, or if I'm going to try to supplement fires. If a battleship went ahead and damage controlled 1 fire, I'm going to pop this reload booster, and I'm going to see if I can set an additional 2 fires on him that are going to be permanent. But here's a good example. If you angle your armor correctly, you're really going to mitigate a lot of the damage from incoming battleships. I know the lug dunham only has like 320s or 330s, but again, you can still angle your armor and mitigate a lot. You just have to be careful of the battleships that have the 380mm guns or higher at this tier, because that's going to be a 50-50 whether or not you're going to be mitigating damage or eating absolute citadels through your ass or nose. And then, God forbid, if enemies have 406s, you're pretty much going to have to bend, grab your ankles and bend over, because that's just the nature of a tier 7 cruiser. They are quite the punching bag. So tier 7 cruisers are, I think, the first tier where you actually start getting a decent amount of armor where you can mitigate a lot of incoming damage. Basically, tier 6 and lower, ooh, it's a bit of a yikes, man. It definitely does not feel good to play cruisers lower tier, that's for sure, because everything just looks at you, can citadel you from other cruisers, from destroyers, battleships, clearly, even carriers with AP rockets. Like, it's just really not a good scenario for the low tier cruiser, that's for sure. So here we go. We find ourselves on a 1-on-2 versus the Ioba and a U-69, I believe. Again, this is not what I want to be doing, but again, I've told you I'm forced into these pushing in situations. Why this ship doesn't like being forced into these situations is I only have four guns up front and four guns in the rear. If I'm pushing in, I'm only going to be able to utilize those two. Again, I only have, two main battery reload boosters, three with superintendent, which here you can clearly see I've expired all my main battery reload boosters. So I'm at quite a disadvantage. Again, with a 16.5-second reload only being supplemented by captain skills and adrenaline rush, again, I'm still at a massive disadvantage when I'm pushing in. So you have to tread with caution, and you really don't want to be doing this. But again, based upon the score, I have to do this. I physically have to push in, and it's not a good thing. If you see a Maya pushing in, you better take full advantage of this because he's at a significant disadvantage. But then again, we could also go on the broad statement of that any cruiser pushing in is pretty much at a significant disadvantage, unless you're in ships like the Stalingrad, the Petro, ships like that, because those are already and Moskva, because those are already ships that are nose in focused, that really don't have to utilize their number 3 turret, and they already have great enough DPM as it is. Well, not necessarily Stalingrad, but they have enough damage and DPM that they can go ahead and take advantage of just pointing their nose forward and going to town. The Des Moines is a prime example of that, okay? But here we go. We launch our torpedoes. We time it with the Elba. If he launched if he had AP loaded, he would have hit me, or not have hit me, sorry, because I timed out the reload. I'm able to kill him with the torpedoes. Again, these torpedoes are no joke. They do a metric fuck ton of damage. And now we're going to slowly try to claw our way back into this game by next targeting this USS Dallas. This is one of those things that, I switched to armor piercing because it's the right thing to do. But again, if I would have just stuck with HE, it would have taken me one less salvo to kill this guy. It's one of those things. And again, my aim wasn't the best here, but it's just one of those things that maybe you want to factor that in too when you're shooting it. I think you want to be shooting HE 70% of the time with the Maya, and probably 30% of the time supplementing with armor piercing, depending on who the target is, right? That's what you really want to be doing. All right, guys, going into my final thoughts about the Maya. I like the Maya. I think she's a great heavy cruiser, especially down here at tier 7. She has a really nice consumable loadout, which is different for the IGN. You don't see main battery reload booster at all. I think this might be, is it the only ship for the Japanese Navy that has main battery reload booster? If I'm wrong, correct me, but I think it might be the only one. But this is my honest opinion. If Wargaming would have not added the main battery reload booster and just buffed the ship's DPM by 10 to 20%, giving it like a 13 second reload, I actually would have liked that more. I'm not a big fan of ships that make them the way they are based upon consumables, like they're heavily reliant on their consumable loadouts. I don't like that. I would much rather have the quote-unquote gimmick baked into the ship and you just play the ship as is. I think it just leads for a healthier game design, and you're not so reliant on consumables. I think the consumables are what Wargaming added to this vessel to try to get sales. And again, I don't know how the ship did in the premium store. I'm not saying that, or how it did if it was in loot boxes or whatnot. All I'm saying is that I think the ship would be in a better state if it didn't have the main battery reload booster. I think the heal would have been enough that people would have jumped on this ship. And it would have been great. I think it would have been super fun. Also, on a side note, I wish we had the option to switch out the fighter for a spotting aircraft so that I could extend my ranges at time, because to me, that's just going to be more useful on the Maya. I already know my AA is shit, so why give me a patrol fighter that's going to shoot maybe 3 to 4 planes down anyways, before the enemy aircraft carrier recalls the squadron after he drops his initial strike on me. So it's not going to do much. And that's probably my initial frustration when it comes to this. And I've talked about this in my Down the Line series with the heavy cruisers. I kind of wish around tier 6 we actually had access to the spotting aircraft. It'd make that line, it would kind of revitalize that line a little bit more than it is, because again, it's not played as much, and I really wish it was. Okay. Another thing too is the torpedoes. Hey, the torpedoes you saw, I actually got a lot of use out of them this game, especially with those 2 lug denims that when I get in pushed around. If you find yourself in scenarios like that, these 8-kilometer torpedoes are no freaking joke. And especially 75 knots, it's pretty damn fast. So if you look at the torpedoes on the ship, you're going to still have a reaction time of 12.2 seconds. That's really not, that's a lot of time, and it's really not hard for battleships to dodge that unless they're caught absolute, for broadside, or if you find yourself at relatively closer ranges to them. But again, I don't think the 8-kilometer torpedoes really supplements the playstyle of the ship, and I would have rather have seen, the 10-kilometer torpedoes on this vessel. I think it would have been better. Like, even if we got copy pasta Myoko torpedoes, I think it would have just been better for this ship. But again, Wargaming wanted to create different, a different style of vessel, I guess. They wanted to kind of reuse assets and reuse armaments from other ships, maybe that aren't as used as much, to kind of like bring life to them. But here we are. I think the package of the Maya is great. I just don't think it's really effective anymore compared to other ships. And because Tier 7 finds itself getting up tiered into Tier 9 a lot, I don't think a lot of people play her, which is crazy because she is one of the few Tier 7 cruisers that actually has a heal. But I think people would rather just have raw DPM than be supplemented by consumables that only have 2 charges, 3 charges max with Superintendent, right? It's just one of those things that I've really found with the Maya. And again, I have some clanmates that have the Maya, and they say the same damn thing. They don't really play her a whole lot because they just get better results consistently out of other Tier 7 cruisers when they find themselves in Tier 7 games. Yes, if from an investment standpoint, it is a great crew trainer for IGN heavy cruisers, and she theoretically does up tier better. But again, you are capped at 15.4 kilometer range. Again, some ships, they're fine with that. But with a ship that's really not, really can't take too much damage, wants to play in the kind of position, and only has 8-kilometer torpedoes, so it's solely reliant on its guns at those ranges. Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a struggle bus here and there. So does it really up tier better? Yes and no, right? It's one of those things. Yes and no. And the last thing is, what I really like about this ship is the HE and AP. This is first of all, it's a very gorgeous looking ship. I know I forgot to mention that. I think the Takao class of cruisers are just gorgeous ships in general. But the HE and AP just hit so hard, and it sucks you only have 8 guns, but again, with the right commander skills, like the right build, you can really make it work, and you can do a lot. You can basically increase the likelihood of you landing your shells on target and doing that catastrophic striking of the target. There's another great example of the torpedoes being able to finish off a fairly healthy battleship, right? Again, it does suck in return, though. Well, it didn't suck. I'm happy that he shot HE at me, but here we go. We have AP loaded. We're going to shoot the Siri, and the Siri has one of those weird citadels, and we just shoot just ever so slightly behind him and get nothing full of overpens, which is always great to see. But he will end up taking us down, but hey, we went down with a fight with 6 kills, 160,000 damage, which is awesome for Tier 6. Again, we shoot a little bit too far behind him, which does bite ass, but oh well. What are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? So hopefully you guys found this video entertaining and, impactful and resourceful. Have a good one. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more. I will catch you all in the next video. Have a good rest of your day, guys, and peace out.